Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this General Purposes Committee meeting. Thank you all for coming, officers, members, cabinet members, and welcome to anyone at home who, on a cold day, might be quite happy sitting there with a cup of coffee watching us on screen. And this meeting is now being live streamed and recorded. Item 1, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of September on pages 3 to 7 of your agenda. Before I ask for all in favour, anyone against, I would like to make one small amendment, please, Julie, on page 5, third paragraph. It reads, the Chair also felt that feedback to the committee would be a good idea and reiterated that it should be within the Breckland area. Now, that doesn't quite make sense to anybody reading that. So I'd like it to read, the Chair also felt that feedback to the committee would be a good idea and reiterated that the volunteering should be within the Breckland area. Everyone happy with that, committee? Yep. With that amendment, can I have a show of hands for passing the minutes? Those of you that were there? No. Okay, thank you. No one against, no abstentions? No, thank you, Julie. I have signed the minutes. Apologies, please, Julie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have one apology this morning from Councillor Morton, and we have Councillor Mark Kittle-Morris in attendance as his substitute.
Thank you very much, Mark. Item 3, declarations of interest. If any member has anything to declare, please do so. If it should crop up later in the meeting and you think, oh, I better do so, just let us know. Item 4, urgent business. I'm not aware of any. Julie, we haven't got any? Nope. 5, non-members wishing to address the meeting. I welcome any present or via the screens. So we move on to item 6, which is the Thetford PSPO renewal. And I will ask Councillor Tristan Ashby to present the report. I will then ask for a seconder to the proposal, and then we'll take some questions. Councillor Ashby.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, committee members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to bring this paper to you this morning. It's with regards to the Thetford Public Spaces Protection Order that was originally in place in 2017 and was renewed again after a 3-year period in 2020. I would like to introduce the report for the renewal of the existing order and would refer committee members to the information contained in the report, which also includes a plan for the proposed area involved. The report recommends renewal of the existing PSPO on a like-for-like basis. This is not a new order and has been in place since 2017. There has been proper consultation on this, and there is an overwhelming amount of support for this from the local residents, local businesses, most importantly the Norfolk Police and Thetford Town Council. The PSPO is an effective tool. By extending the PSPO for further years, it will demonstrate the Council's commitment to play a role around reducing and preventing crime and protecting the community and its environment. It is therefore recommended that members approve option 2 that's contained within the report to ensure the continual operation of the order in Thetford Town Centre. In terms of the consultation, we had 73 responses, 16 of which were from local businesses. So this has been a very effective order for what is now 6 years. Local residents, local businesses, Norfolk Police and Thetford Town Council are hoping that the order will be renewed, and that's the paper that's put in front of you today. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you. Taylor. Questions from the committee? Mark.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think you've answered one of my questions by saying the 73 responses.
Mark, can you do your microphone, please? Or try.
As well.
I know.
It will work eventually.
It will.
Yes, it will. Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think you've answered one of my questions, Tristan, about the number of responses, which I think is fairly low. But the two important ones, of course, are the police and the town council. However, I do gather from the report that the enforcement was a little bit lax over the last 3 years, in terms of the police not being willing to do it or not being able to do it through resources. And I do note in the report that you have a pilot scheme starting for enforcement. Is there enough money in that fund to fund it for the full 3 years, or is it just a pilot programme to see how it works?
Thank you very much, Councillor. So in terms of the initiative under Safer Streets, the team have applied for funding for that and has been successful. So the plan is that we're going to have a pilot for approximately 18 months, where we will have 2 wardens employed on a part-time basis to support the measures that the police are undertaking. But not only is that about enforcement, but it's also about signposting and supporting those that they come into contact with. So rather than just be a reactory measure, it's also a preventative measure. Now, after the end of that 18-month period, assuming that process and pilot has been successful, we will look for additional funding with the support of Thetford Town Council to expand that pilot even further. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you for that. That's excellent. However, you did say part-time. I presume that they'll be doing the pre-Friday, which is Thursday night, Friday night and Saturday night, as part-time, because those are the days and evenings which will be causing the most problems.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So there will be a rota put in place with regards to these 2 part-time positions, and we'll ensure that they are available and that awareness is raised on the key periods of time during the most activity that is likely to encounter within Thetford Town Centre.
Okay. Sarah, would you like? Yeah.
There you go. Third time lucky. Thank you. Right. So before I ask the question, just to acknowledge that my Labour colleagues who sit on Thetford Town Council have voted unanimously for this. But I do have some questions just around some of the content in the report. So we've got 3 different elements which are covered under the PSPO currently, and there were 81 breach offences to date within the existing PSPO. Can you give us some information about how they broke down according to each of the 3 different areas, please?
So if I could pass that level of detail over to one of the officers, please.
Yep, Craig.
I don't think we got the specific breakdown. That was from the police, so I don't know if we got specific details of that. But we could definitely get that, and we could ask the police for further breakdown of information. I think it was just an overview of breaches, but I don't think it's broken down by activity of, whether it was alcohol, whether it was a scooter, whatever it was.
I think, am I too cold to work the button? Sorry, just bear with me. As you might expect, given my professional sort of role, I have a number of questions.
That's
so
fine.
please
Yes.
stop me
carry
if
on.
it gets tedious. So in terms of the it was interesting just to read the consultation responses. So there's a clear kind of separation between the three areas. So the public urination, I think we can all be agreed on that there's a certain element of compliance with that potentially, notwithstanding the breach offence sort of contents. But, excuse me, I am really struck by the fact that half of people think that street drinking has worsened, excuse me, and nearly 2/3 of people think that, or say they've been directly affected by the antisocial use of the wheeled kind of vehicles. So a couple of questions. Can you please define what antisocial use is of the wheeled vehicles? And can you also say what direct effect means? Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, antisocial behaviour is really causing annoyance, isn't it? It's causing probably alarm or distress. Even the definition. I mean, I think we would use the same that's in the Antisocial Behaviour Act, but generally it is, you know, it is nuisance, annoying, alarm or distress. And I think direct means that they are directly affected by it, i.e. that they are there and they are directly affected. As opposed to indirectly, I was seeing other people, or you know, it's affecting other things. So I think direct means that you know they are there, the vehicle or the weird vehicle is there, and they are directly in some shape or form, i.e. that it's causing annoyance, alarm, distress, etc.
Steve.
Yeah, here we go. I think just to add to that, specific to Thetford, in terms of the wheeled scooters, etc., is along that pedestrian high street. So it's the pedestrianised high street, and the usage of scooters through that when you have members of the public walking through, prams, etc., and travelling at speed is the antisocial element to it. So it's not to address it in other areas specific to pedestrianised areas.
Okay. Craig, yeah.
And I think also it probably should be stressed that, you know, not specific to Thetford, I think there's been quite a lot of concern about the rise of sort of motorised scooters and vehicles. So again, I think you know we have seen in that. Sorry, it may be reflected in. It's not specific to Thetford, but people using motorised and battery-powered scooters and vehicles has risen, and that you know there's concern about using them on pavements and pedestrianised areas, and the risks that they could pose to the general public as well.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I live in Watton, and the Norwich Road pavements are just covered, and mobility scooters. It's all ages, all bits of kit. And I know it's a busy road, but we have to work with what we've got, don't we? We can't widen the roads or suddenly put cycle tracks or anything. Sarah, have you got another one?
Okay, thank you. So this doesn't specify e-scooters, it specifies the analogue version of scooters and skateboards, and mobility scooters aren't included in this. So when you look at the demographic of use of bikes, scooters and skateboards, so bikes is different, but they are much more used by younger people, particularly children. Scooters are highly used by children, skateboards obviously highly used by children. So the concern here is that we are disproportionately criminalising children's normal activity in their independent travel between their home and normal destinations that children go to, e.g. the park. And we don't have data from the breach offences to demonstrate what the demographics are in terms of that criminalised activity. So that, for me, is a substantial concern, and I am concerned that we're being asked to renew this PSPO without data that looks at the demographic outcomes of this. Is there any light at all that you can shed on that question, please?
I don't think we are criminalising those activities. The order is quite clear, isn't it? To me, is that no person shall. So we're not saying people can't use them. What the order is saying, no person shall ride upon a skateboard, a bicycle, or other self-propelled weird vehicle within the designated pedestrian zone, and this is the key bit, in such a manner so as to cause damage to property or nuisance or annoyance to any person within the designated pedestrian zone. So I think if people are legitimately going about their business and they're not causing damage, they're not causing nuisance and they're not causing annoyance, they're not in breach of the order. And I think it's obviously down to professional judgment, but I think it's quite clear they are using in such a manner. So it's how they're using those, and you know they're in the pedestrian zone.
Just before I go to Tristan, so picking up Sarah's point and Craig's response, so could some of the new signage reflect that people using things legitimately and wisely, fine. It's about being appropriate, isn't it, in that area, whether it's the drinking, the urination, whatever. And I think sometimes that very clear signage, even as we know with lots of our foreign residents in our towns, you may need some pictorial stuff with that as well. Will that help? Tristan.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really to enforce what Craig has said. This is not about criminalising the use or the ownership of said vehicles. This is about behaviour, and it's about trying to be proactive in terms of getting people to understand the effects of their behaviour as opposed to sort of demonising the use of said vehicles.
Okay.
Can I just, sorry?
Yes, sorry, Craig.
I think also with the street wardens, it's just quite important to, you know, we want to give them the option that they can do enforcement and they can serve fixed penalties. The idea of those wardens is to engage with people, to take a lot of low-level intervention. So it's not a case that, you know, they're automatically, you know, people who street drinking even, you know, they're not automatically going to get enforcement. The idea is to, you know, engage, discourage, educate, chat with people, get a bit of relationship going, and hopefully by taking those low-level interventions, you're actually going to avoid it, you know. So, you know, if people are minded to do that. So I think it's really important that the idea of those, you know, I think we've learned from it, we had COVID support officers out there, that ended, but, you know, they were all very well received. People got, you know, initially people were a bit concerned about what they are and what are they doing, but actually people engaged with them. They saw them as a, you know, as a support, and you know, they were received really well. So hopefully by having those people on the ground, that will hopefully avert some of the need. Yeah, if there are hardened people that are, you know, they're not taking the advice and they're going to carry on causing issues as a last resort, yeah, there might be some enforcement, but hopefully by those low-level interventions, we'll, you know, they will be dealing with that in a proportionate and a low-level way.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I did note the section on safeguarding and completely welcome that. And I think a lot of my questions are just drilling down into the detail because I work professionally as an expert witness, so I understand the importance of detail in this. And my principal concern is that so much of it relies on the subjective opinion of the enforcement. So nuisance is subjective, and we are de facto criminalising this activity when an opinion is such that particular behaviour constitutes nuisance. My concern was really quite well demonstrated last night at the SNAP meeting, where just very briefly and tangentially, there was a lot of discussion around youth, and we had members of the public, and I am pretty much quoting, as I'm sure Councillor Webb will verify, talking about the feral youth of Dereham, saying that the youth have gone feral homogeneously as a group. And we know that young people are sort of damned if they do and damned if they don't, to a certain extent. We know the cuts in sort of funding available has removed opportunities for them, and we know that there is that atmosphere in general around young people's normal, legitimate behaviour. So my questions are really sort of driving at that, and also I'd be really interested to know if we have almost 2/3 of, admittedly, a very small pool of respondents stating that they've been directly affected by this issue. What other things are we doing to actually get to the root cause of this, which is, I think, two things. One is around educating the adults and the public what constitutes normal, regular behaviour. And the other thing is around educating young people around respectful behaviour of our public realm. Thank you.
I think that's sits at the heart of our street wardens. We've got evidence of public interaction through our work, as Craig referenced with COVID. There were people who we were engaging on the streets when after the pandemic to help inform and advise and educate. And I think that's, as Craig said, when it comes to enforcement, the approach is always that kind of fixed penalty notice is always the last point in the chain. We will absolutely employ street wardens who are trained to engage with people, to inform and educate, and to be able to speak with young people or their parents to help them to understand just the level of behaviour that is acceptable.
Morning, everybody. I had the portfolio several years back before the order came in, and we had a whole room full of Thetford residents and people come forward and say how worried they were about what was going on. When the order was brought in, there was a significant improvement on it. So I feel that if it's not approved at this meeting, I feel that I'm fearing that it'll go back to how it was before. And I know there's stuff which I get that, but I think we've got to trust the people who are going out there to actually take a proactive view rather than just slap penalty notices and say, oh, I've got 20 today. It shouldn't ever work like that. It should be, you know, how can we help? What's the issue here? Do you realise you're upsetting people? That type of approach rather. And I'm quite confident that this pilot will help on that side of things. So I'd like to support it. Thank you.
I think they can, yeah. We haven't recruited to them yet. The funding has been agreed. So I think, you know, we can, as part of that role is to enforce and educate. I think we have, well, yeah, I was going to say we've got a blank piece of paper. I think we have, within reason. Obviously, the funding is going to be assessed for effectiveness, so we have to obviously deliver on the deliverables of what we've said. But I think, yes, those roles are education, engagement, enforcement. So yeah, we can be mindful to that. So I think we can look towards that, and obviously they're going to be employed to us, and we can, within reason, decide how we use that resource and how we best manage it.
And I think as well, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that it's right and proper that this is a partnership approach. This isn't putting all of enforcement and all of education onto the district council. This is for us to work with the police and with the town council as well to say how can we best educate and inform to make sure that we help to address some of these concerns that residents have. And that's in the context of information from the police, but also from the Safer Thetford Action Group, who are the local community safety group, who have been very much petitioning us to do this as well, and they're fully supportive of this work. So I think I'm confident that through the partnership we'll have the right people in the right places to be able to get to where we want to do, and that isn't issuing fixed penalty notices. It's quite the opposite. It's to make sure that people understand what the aspirations are of that local community.
Okay.
This has been really, really helpful. I've just got two sort of observations / questions or requests maybe. So one would be in terms of the pilot programme, what KPIs have you got in place to monitor success? I would be really interested to look at we all are very aware of the situation that every single council is facing up and down the land, and certainly places like Peterborough have come under really sharp criticism for the use of fixed penalty notices associated with their PSPOs, criminalising wheeled use activity in pedestrianised areas. It's literally the same form of PSPO as this one, to generate in nearly £100,000 worth of revenue each year. So I am alive to those pressures. So could you please just talk us through, or at least give serious consideration to capturing success criteria within that pilot, which establishes this move away from, or really embeds that sort of position that that issuing fixed penalty notices is not the most desirable outcome. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully support everything you've said. And I think the fact that this is a pilot demonstrates the need for us to collate evidence over that 18-month period to ensure that this is sustainable. So KPIs, other data, etc., will be pulled together over that period of time to provide that next phase. But just to re-emphasise the fact that this is all about positive conversations, this is all about preventative care. Those are the key dynamics of those roles that are going to be put in place if this is progressed. And the enforcement issue of fines, etc., are always going to be the last choice. It's just a tool in the toolbox that these people can use should they need to.
Thank you. One more.
One last one. That's
what they're here for.
This is the great opportunity to have this discussion, and I think the reason for that is because I think there is a lot more awareness of things like antisocial behaviour, and I think we'll be coming under increasing pressure on this, possibly financially as well as sort of socially. So I think these things do need to be tested. I do look forward to seeing the list of those success criteria and seeing how that preventative care is embedded within that pilot. That sounds very positive. The other thing that I would really welcome, whether this is the forum for it, which it sounds as though it is, would be to have regular and frequent monitoring information coming back into this group, even just as a briefing note, periodic briefing note around progress against those success criteria, and also just going back to my earlier point around those breach offences, to understand the demographics of those, because it is a principal concern to me that there could be disproportionate representation of our younger residents within that, and I think we should be alive to that potential. So if we're able, please, to have that quality of information coming back in, I would very much welcome it.
Thank you.
Yeah, the important thing with this is of course transparency. We want to be able to share evidence because it demonstrates what we as a district council are doing directly to help support the ambitions of the town. So that's absolutely right. So when we agree and have all of those KPIs signed off, then appropriate points in the future, I wouldn't want to we've got to enable the project to be delivered and start to work. But with agreement with our portfolio holder and with the chairman, then we will be happy to bring forwards information at appropriate junctures in the project.
I just ask the one. It might be a dumb question. I don't know Thetford very well, but these all sound like completely legal activities if they're done in the right place. So, for instance, if children have scooters, they're going to go out and they're going to play with their friends together on their scooters. Is there somewhere they can go to do this?
Yeah, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that that it's not just the use of scooters. This is to address antisocial behaviour. So that's activity which is causing harassment or alarm or distress. I think we should be understand that it's a reasonable there are numerous areas around the town where where kids, especially children, can use their scooters. So I think this is to address the antisocial behaviour element of it and not just general use.
I just wanted to add two things. One, Sarah's beaten me to it. So because this committee, we do make decisions, we do recommendations, so there has to be a consequence, there has to be an outcome. So I'm suggesting, if my committee agree with me, that we ask for a report back in 12 months, because you need time for it to embed. Whether it comes here or to overview and scrutiny will be something I need just to talk through with the legal guys, because we want to get it in the right place. And those of you on the committee will know that I usually add this to most recommendations now. It's no good saying let's do something if, well, what happened to it 3 years ago? We need to keep on top of it. And the other one about Steve's point, and I've worked with Steve and Alison for many years, a lot of antisocial behaviour is about people's perception, isn't it? So if a child's ball comes into your garden once, you throw it back, end of. If it comes in 9 or 10 times a day, that becomes something different. So Sarah's absolutely, everyone's right, it's perception, so it is about education. What is normal, what is real in this very different world we live in. So we've heard the recommendation, we have a seconder. If we can put in the minutes, Julie, to review in 12 months at the appropriate committee. You sit well with that? Okay. So can I have a show of hands in favour of the recommendation, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tristan. Thank you, Craig. I'll let you go. Yes, thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 7, which is the salary sacrifice scheme. Alison, are you presenting this one? Right. And we have Councillor Crane here as well, as it's a double act, really.
We decided not to say it together. It sounded a bit strange, so I'm going to be talking through. However, this proposal does cover both environmental and staff, so it's really, really important that both of us are here to actually hear what you think about the proposal. I'd also like to say before I start that this is a completely different proposal to what we had for staff some time ago. This is a far more effective, efficient, green proposal that's come forward, and I personally think it's a really important thing to endorse it. However, as I said, we'll present and see where we go. So, Councillor Crane and I are pleased to present to you the report proposing the extension to our current salary sacrifice scheme to include an option for staff to lease an electric or hybrid car. This will not only help reduce the organisation's impact on CO2 emissions, but also enhance the benefit package to help attract and retain our employers. Should I say employees? Sorry, Linda. A salary sacrifice scheme allows an employee to exchange part of their salary to lease an electric or hybrid car. As the employee is paid less as a result, they pay less income tax, national insurance, and if they are in the scheme, pension. In turn, we also, as the employer, will also save on pension and national insurance contributions. Along those savings in reducing CO2 emissions, there is also savings to be made from a reduced mileage rate and a lowered car user allowance where this is applicable. We have Claire and Jason with us to answer any technical questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for the recommendation? Thank you, Mark. And questions? Off you go, Mark.
Thank you. What it doesn't say in the report is who pays for the lease.
There we go.
Good morning. So the lease is between the employee and the lease car company, so it is a contract between those two. So that is where the lease is. Nothing to do with in terms of the council. They're not council cars, if you like.
See that in the report that it is a lease, but if you're taking if the employee is sacrificing some of their salary, how is the car actually paid for? Who pays for the lease contract?
So what happens in practical terms is the employee and the lease company agree which car they're going to have, and then the lease company tells us, the employer, they're having this car and it's this amount of money each month, and then they invoice the council and that gets deducted from their salary.
That's useful. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? No. I was going to add on, as I usually do now, we'd like to see a report back in 12 months, just to see how many have taken it up, what the benefit has been, has there been any snags, you know, because in here the minimal costs will be covered by officers already in post, but has there been something that's been a blip that none of us could forecast? You know, come back, be honest with us, because that's what it's all about. And again, I will check with Julie and legal whether it should be this committee or overview and scrutiny. Jason. Yeah.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. We can, of course, bring it back in 12 months' time, but as you're aware, we do an annual audit, an annual carbon audit, which typically lands around about March, April time.
Okay.
If amenable to yourself, and we're at another 4 or 5 months, we could roll it and pull it all in as part of that. But it's your call. Absolutely, we can come back in 12 months' time, or we can tie it in together with a wider piece of work where we do the annual audit. So I just want to give you that option.
Okay, well, I'd like to see it back in 12 months for the number of staff that have taken it up. So it can just be a brief written report. Please don't feel you have to come. But just, again, as I said with the previous item, this committee is a decision-making committee, and we need to know what outcomes are, whether they need then tweaking, and then do the carbon one in 18 months. Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Your question about monitoring has just prompted a thought from me, which you, Lou, please bear. So in terms of the monitoring on uptake of the scheme, would it be possible to also do a qualitative, i.e. ask people about demand for charging on site as well, because that is a deficit within the town. There is charging available, but I'm conscious of the time lag between increased demand and providing capacity.
Helen, do you have an instant answer?
Thank you. As you may or may not be aware, we are in the process of establishing charging points at Elizabeth House for anyone that comes to use this facility and for our employees here. All right?
Yep. So my question wasn't about providing it was about making sure there's enough capacity, because we're going to increase demand. So I think we should be proactively and often sort of checking demand versus capacity and making sure that we're allowing for the inevitable delay between increased, say, 80% demand and then bringing on new charging.
Thanks, yeah, a really good question. At the moment, there's plenty of capacity with existing charges, so that's not an initial concern. As part of the additional charges we're putting in at Swaffham and Watton and here, that will help, but it's not just a council thing, a Breckland council or indeed a county council thing. As demand rises, I'm sure we will anticipate that the private sector will step into that space as well. However, we are working closely with County, who have got a current £1.5 million pilot programme via the levy funding. So we're working really closely with them. We're hoping, touch wood, and working really hard to be part of a pilot initiative as that rollout. And they're anticipating a second phase of an additional £6 million, so £7.5 million across the county. And we're working really hard to get our car parks and spaces and on-street parking up that order. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to come out first against all the other districts, but we're doing what we can to position ourselves to make sure that Norfolk as a whole gets the right balance, but we are making noises in the right places. So we're excited to bring that back over the next few months.
Okay, Helen.
Yes, thank you. And I'd just like to add to that when we do put the EV charging points in here, that we will be future-proofing that to make sure that if we need to add on, the infrastructure will be there to do that.
Okay. No other questions? Right, so we have the recommendation which has been seconded. Can I have a show of hands? All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So that recommendation has been approved, and we've noted in there about a report coming back. Yep. So item 8, next meeting. The next meeting will be held on Thursday the 11th of January here, unless we have to do an urgent one, which of course we can be called to stand up. So with that, thank you all for attending. It's a bit early, but have a happy Christmas.